Today is day 2 of the April 92 7-day retreat at Springwater. I wrote down a number of questions which came up in group or individual meetings. I have done this now for maybe over a year. And also for quite a while have read all the questions that I have written down, not all the questions that have come up. I can't remember them all or don't have the time to write them down all. People have felt it helpful to hear all of the questions, even if we cannot go into every one of them. So since there has been this kind of positive feedback, I'm continuing to read all the questions, which I will mention in the beginning have not been put down verbatim. I'm incapable of doing that. I can only remember the gist of what was said, and sometimes it combines with very similar questions that other people have asked. So if you don't quite recognize your question, don't assume that I haven't understood what you said. In sitting, I don't quite know how much I should push myself. The deepest experiences that I have had in the past, and that was Zen training, came as a consequence of pushing, of exhausting myself and so forth. My more natural tendency is rather to sit and be contented with what is, although it isn't real contentment either. There's so much going on in this mind and body, such an overwhelming number of thoughts, and then also drowsiness and tiredness, that I feel a great need for the structure of the I, a need to choose what to do to get out of this chaos. Coming back to my breathing helps with this. I feel it is my old focusing on ways of following the breath. I do need to have some anchor. Without that, I'm lost, overwhelmed. So I have to choose something as an anchor. Is it possible to live in this world out of silence? The vast silence that I read about in books that you talk about. Is it possible to live in this world out of silence? Or does one have to go into a hermitage, live as a recluse, to live out of this silence? Silence, I mean not being constantly entangled in thought. I want to live out of that silence, out of that silent way. And yet, I can tell that there's a deep resistance, a fear, which manifests as an ugly pain in my body. You talk so much about listening, and we're listening together to sounds. We did it yesterday, a lot. The night before, the rain and thunder. In listening more to sounds and more openly than I used to, I find that I hear much more sounds that I never heard before. But then there's also the fear of getting lost, not knowing where I am or where I'm going. there is a train of questions flowing through my mind. Should I do something with these questions? Maybe we'll start with one of the beginning ones. They're very similar. The one saying, I don't know whether I should push or not. I remember getting to some deep experiences when I pushed myself, put energy, willpower, effort into my sitting, and was also encouraged and pushed by others. Then something happened. If that doesn't happen, my sitting is rather, I call it contented, but contentment isn't the right word either. It doesn't get any place. And then the other comment or description of being so overwhelmed either by barrages of thought, sentiment, sensation, emotion, the chaos of it, and also drowsiness and tiredness. Don't I need something? It wasn't a question, it says, I do need an anchor in all of this. And for the time being, this first day, the anchor is following the breathing. That's an old tried way. Coming back, as it is said so often by so many people, coming back to my breath, my old breath. Concentrating on it, having it as a focus. Because without focus, I'm lost, I drown. Here, during a week's getting together, examining things together in private meetings, group meetings, and alone, we're questioning all the assumptions that come our way. Because we live largely on assumptions. I have to do this or else something else will happen. If I don't do this, there will be calamity or getting lost, getting drowned. Let's question and be careful, maybe even let put aside all assumptions that we come across. There are many more that we're not aware of at this point. And find out what this fear of getting lost, of getting overwhelmed, of getting drowned, of disappearing, what it is about this fear, whether it has any reality to it, or is just nurtured by fantasy and thought and image, which sort of feeds on itself. Sitting on a first day of a retreat, maybe one has come to this place, one has heard about it or remembers as this lovely, quiet hillside, the quiet meadows and woods and valleys, and one wants to drink and heal in this quietness, and what reveals itself is within a quiet environment, a noisy, chaotic inside. That's what happens usually on the first day. Maybe on other days. Being much more in touch, not just with the quietness outside, but with the noise inside. The helter-skelter of wants and wishes and fears. The thoughts, the memories, and every one of them associated physically with sensation and emotion. The reality of the sensation and emotion appears to give credence to the thought that aroused it. The physical feeling of which I have come to call fear, the physicalness of it has established the idea that there is something to be afraid of. Because usually the thought or memory that caused the fear did not come into awareness. It happened so quick or so unconsciously. But this feeling is there now in the solar plexus or in the intestines, in the heartbeat, in the tightened muscles, the narrowed pathways of perception. And feeling this way, there is the conviction there's something dangerous going on here. Something to be afraid of, something to take action against, to protect myself from. And the brain scans for ways to protect me from being overwhelmed, drowned, lost. What we're asking in all simplicity is whether in the presence of whatever is going on, the memories, the thoughts, orderly or chaotic, helter-skelter, one after another, one contradicting the next, and the sensations, the feelings, organismic, the emotions, whether all of that can just be there in the midst of this quiet, spacious room and hillside and valley and universe. Just be taking place as it is, with some awareness that does not shrink away for assumed dangers, assumed threats. An awareness that is open, shedding light on fear with all of its physical accompaniments, without running away into techniques, thoughts, beliefs, refuges. Is that possible for a human being like you and me to be in the midst of chaos, the chaos of thought and emotion, which is how we human beings live day in and day out? Not just in the danger of tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes and missiles, artillery fire, terrorist bombs. Those are real dangers, but we live a good part of our time where there's none of that in the danger that thought and imagination creates. And it creates the same symptoms, the same dis-ease, the same, as one person put it, ugly pain inside. So, isn't the first step for all of us to be in the midst of it, in the present, in the full presence of it, without seeking a way out, without seeking a way in, just being there, and a quiet listening, looking and feeling, emerging out of this stillness to what's there. And just right now, what's there is the breathing. There was a breath coming up. The breath had been held while talking, and then it came up. Body needs oxygen. And there it is. The breathing is there. whether the mind is chaotic or quiet, afraid or joyful, there's breathing. And it reveals itself freshly every moment, many times a minute, or maybe just once a minute if the breathing is very slow. What is there to come back to? It's not a back breath. It's here, right now, freshly. Never, ever was it here before like this. Breathing in everything that's in the air. As one person whose book we read or we heard a tape together recently said, we breathe out part of everything we are, part of our heart, part of our liver and lungs, because all of these cells and molecules and atoms are constantly recycling. So we also breathe each other in. Seems an amusing thought that we breathe each other's parts in and out. But it's also at least a thought that we are not so separate from each other. We all have each other's parts in our breathing. And fresh ones all the time. New, not been here before. The inhalation, the exhalation is what it is, and it is not known. Volumes can be and have been written about it, but the volumes that are written about inhalation and exhalation, scientifically, religiously, yogically, the volumes of writing are not this instant of breathing. That has not been captured in any book, but it's happening. And it's possible for there to be awareness of this breathing without any judgment, without any knowledge, without any manipulation. Breathing in the midst of the chaos of thinking and emoting and sensing, aching or pleasuring. There's breathing going on. And awareness can capture it all. Captures it. It sounds so intentional. It has space for it all. It has space and light and stillness for it all to happen as it happens. Without clever thought trying to figure out to do something about itself. Thought is creating most of this chaos, and then it says, I have to take care of it. And figuring out methods which add to the volume. Can thought think, maybe it would be beneficial to be quiet for a while? It can think that, can't it? Whether it'll do it is another question. But can thought realize the beneficialness of stepping out of the picture for a while, taking a vacation, so that there can just be what is without being immediately known, interpreted, manipulated, turned into a technique for thought-created goals? Is what's happening. And to just become aware of that may be enough. There's a tremendous habitual momentum behind thought to figure things out, to create problems and then to solve them, which what we're faced with in this world, on this earth, is the constant accumulation, proliferation of problems. Every time we try to solve one, we create more than one new problem, most of the time. There'll be another time, I'm sure there'll come responses about, is thought always creating problems? Is thought Can't thought have any beneficial function? Maybe we'll deal with it right this moment so misunderstanding doesn't start blocking the listening. We're thinking and looking right now, aren't we? If a human being thinks fairly accurately because there is some accurate seeing, then thought is very helpful. Thought that proceeds rationally and accurately is very helpful, because we cannot get along without thought most of the time. But then let it be as accurate and untainted as possible, not tainted by what I want and don't want, the pleasures, the fears. Then thought starts to dither and create and react and cloud the doors of perception through its wants and fears. So there can't be any more clear seeing and therefore no clear thinking. Am I talking too fast? So, in the midst of the drowsiness, the tiredness, the chaoticness of swirling everything, to become aware of the breathing and the heartbeat and the sensations and the fact that there is thinking and not so caught up in the content. See that there is thought as a fact, but the content ensnares the body and mind, and then it's no longer openly listening, and the breath is gone too. It seems to be gone. It's not, but it seems to be. So, listening to the breathing, is it a concentration practice which brings with it the need to battle distractions and the fight is on? Or can listening to the breathing be without exclusion of anything? Not trying to become a perfect concentrator on breath, but to hear it as it's there, as it's manifesting in an innocent and wondering way. What is all of this going on? Without my control, without my intention. Whether we intend it or not, there's breathing going on, which is miraculous. And as the mind listens gently, without fight, without effort, effort comes in when I fight what I label distractions. But when there is listening without effort to whatever this thing is that I call breathing, then it doesn't become exclusive. Then the twittering of the bird is also there. All the leftovers from a moment ago thoughts are there, stirring in the body. It's when we begin to label it, oh, this is my heart, this is an ache in my intestines, and this is the bird, and this is the breath, and then what should I listen to first? Then the world becomes cut up into pieces as we label and react into what's desirable, what's a distraction. But it's so difficult with a mind which has been trained in labeling and reacting its whole lifetime. It's very difficult for this mind to just listen without knowing, and therefore not labeling, and therefore not reacting, and therefore no exclusion of whatever's here. It's all here when it's not reacted to and known in terms of my pleasure or pain of the past. So the very first question we read, I remember the best experiences I had were as a consequence of strong pushing, strong effort. And the ambivalence, should I go on with this or work it up to get a good experience again, an experience maybe of, I don't know what, non-duality or bliss, quietness. I don't recommend it. It's up to you how you want to work. It's up to each one. I'm not prescribing practices and I'm not taking them away. Who am I to do that? All I'm saying is that simple, open listening takes no effort but an interest in what's there to find out what it really truly is this instant before I've thought about it and made it into something. I want to find out about this present state of being inside and out before I know it. Before the next thought says, oh, it's this or that. Or if the thought comes up, it's this or that, then I can see what it does, how it operates. Then there's a reaction. I don't like it. I want more of it. And with that, the sound of the bird or the free breath is gone, and we're on our track of wanting something or evading something. That all can reveal itself to a mind that is interested in itself. Realizing the deep importance of understanding oneself thoroughly. Because each one of us, as we sit here and listen, we are in a way representative of all human beings who live on this earth and have lived on this earth. We talked in detail about it yesterday. We all have the same processes operating. Thought and memory and the power and momentum of it. The power and momentum of creating imagery which is not real, but passes for real, and we attack the image and kill the person, or hate the person, or feel attracted to a person on the basis of an image. Don't know who this person really is. We carry grudges. Sometimes a whole lifetime. Some people die with their grudges, maybe pass them on to their children and relatives. And some people are able to see through this and drop what happened in the past so that the mind is cleared. See, this holds true for all of us, whether we live here in the West or in the East, in the North or in the South. Because the whole structure, atomic, molecular, physiological, neurochemical, the whole thing is the same for all of us, albeit there are little differences in personal background, in personal looks, in personal history. There's a difference for all of us, but that is true for all of us too. So in becoming interested in one human being that is here, manifesting right here, this moment on this chair, and looking inwardly as well as being open outwardly, we're exploring human beings who have lived and struggled and suffered for millennia and imposed pain and hurt on each other, wittingly and unwittingly. But if there was clarity about our all hanging together, being together in this, we would not hurt each other intentionally. The whole program of vengeance would melt away. if we really looked inwardly and understood all the processes of guilt and grudge and wanting to get back. The power of the past, which moves us in the present to do such painful things to ourselves and each other. Can that come into the light of day, the power of the past, as it manifests in the present reaction? Not look for it. It will become transparent with a growing, deepening interest in how we live as human beings, alone and together. So this moment of sitting down, let the mind be chaotic or swampy or foggy or drowsy. Let it be what it will, paining or joying. What is it all if I don't make it into concepts and knowledge? If it's just lived from moment to moment. And the breathing is in the middle of it all. The heartbeat, physical sensations. The light of the sun, the darkness of the night, coolness of the wind, the sound of trees when the wind blows, the sound of rain on the roof, on the wooden deck, the chirping of birds, their constant activity up and down to the feeder and to the tree and off to the tree row farther back, yellow ones and blue ones and red ones and brown marked ones. It's all there. And we're not separate from it, unless we think we are. The chaos inside is the past manifesting in the present, all our wanting and fearing, and the contradiction of it. Because we want one thing and also don't want it, or we want another thing that contradicts the first thing we want. Then we're afraid of failing, afraid of the future, afraid of old age, afraid of dying. That's what's manifesting in this whirlwind right now. Why are there so many thoughts? Because there are so many wants, so many fears. There's no wanting at this instant, no fearing anything, just letting be what is. Not wanting anything to be different. Not being afraid of meeting anything that's there or may come. One may find thoughts diminishing because they're not called upon to figure something out, how to get something, how to be something, how to avoid something, how to protect against something. These impulses to make secure, get what we want, they constantly call on thought to get going and figure out something. And then we want not to have thoughts. And then thought is called upon to figure out a way not to have itself, to quiet itself down. This constant action, or rather reaction, to our wants and needs, which I'm not expressing this in a blameful way. It may be heard this way and sound this way, inflections in the voice, but it's a very, very important thing to get off of the blame train, all of us. Blaming ourselves, blaming others, blaming the environment, the organization, the company, the family. And just to want to understand how all of this is functioning and perpetuating itself. as manifested in myself. Here's where I can observe it firsthand. In President Bush, I can't observe it firsthand, but here I can. That's why it's also so important not just to develop a technique to cut off thought, which is very often, at least in the beginning and maybe also in advanced stages of spiritual practice, techniques to cut thoughts off, to repress them, control them, sometimes sort of to outdo them with a technique, holding on to a mantra, a koan, or whatever, all the techniques that have been developed. To concentrate so, so powerfully, with such effort, on a word, a picture, a thought, an area in the body, so that thought is sort of powerfully controlled and excluded from that. It doesn't happen very long, because I did teach this for a while at a Zen center, and what people asked most of the time is, how can I hold on to my koan? Or follow my breath more effectively, because there are so many thoughts. But I don't know how I got to this, why I brought this up. Oh, yes. I don't want to suppress or repress or control thoughts. I want at least to get one glimpse at what it is I've been thinking about. Or what are the thoughts all about? So I can learn about what occupies this thinking computer. And what was mentioned a little bit earlier comes to light then. As long as I want something, thoughts are busy trying to get what I want, either in fantasy or trying to find other ways to materialize what I want. As long as I'm afraid of something, thought is called upon to protect or to imagine something that will take care of the fear, bring security. I find that the volume of activity of thinking through listening to their content has to do with deeper impulses of what I need and want and crave and fear. And most, I haven't made any statistical analysis, but most of thought is concerned about me, my life, my future, my security, my happiness, or the future happiness and security of whatever larger group I'm identified with. There are larger groups all of us are identified with, but very often this is to the exclusion of other large groups with which other people are identified with. That is of less concern to us, or sometimes there is animosity. So, why do violence to anything that is happening in this human body, rather than allow it to come to light and left alone, not do anything with it, against it, for it? Just at a glimpse, to see what it's all about, and let it be, let it go, let it stay, whatever. Awareness is not thinking. It has nothing to do with thought. It has nothing to do with anything causally that I'm aware of. It's just either there or it isn't there. And when it's there, it has infinite space to illumine whatever's there, shed light, clear it up. Not necessarily do away with it. That happens on its own, without the will of me. Can one look into that, whether this is really so? Find out for oneself. Not just believe in what I say. That's not good enough. It has to be seen for oneself by each one of us. Are we interested a little bit? What is this moment? As it is, not knowing what it is and not needing to know. Just openly, vulnerably. There. The listening, the feeling, the looking. Not knowing where it's going. It may not even go anyplace. Aware of another assumption, can it drop? Get out of the way. Beep, beep. We will end here for today.